Good morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, it's another one in my series of 3 practice exercises. Now these aren't intended to be finished paintings, just something for you to have a go at, get used to your wet in wet washes, practice your water to paint ratios and just have a go and learn from it. But these are great if you're a beginner or even a more experienced painter. So we're going to be having a go at this lovely cat's eye, this elephant's eye, and this gorgeous crocodile's eye. So come and join me and we'll paint these step by step together, hopefully in about half an hour each. So for today's materials, on all 3 exercises I'm using some 100% cotton Saunders Waterford rough, and it's on a block so it won't need stretching, but any decent watercolour paper will do. Now I've had several ask about whether they should leave the paper on the block as they were concerned about the watercolour seeping through onto the next sheet. Now definitely leave it on until your painting is totally finished. Now you can throw as much wet paint onto the top sheet as you want. Just wait for it to dry, find that little gap. Now I like to use a plastic card and a quick whoosh around, and it will never seep onto the sheet below. There's no point in paying for a block otherwise. Right, and 3 brushes from my range, a 3/4 inch flat, a number 12 and number 6 round. Okay, so for this first exercise I've got this lovely blue cat's eye, and this is an exercise in getting those wet in wet blends. Never be afraid of using too much water. Now in my classes you'll very rarely hear me say you're not using enough paint. It's nearly always you're not using enough water, because that's when the magic happens. Drop in thicker consistency paint into the wash and watch it blend into the wetter wash. And remember, these washes must have more pigment and less water if you want to avoid those back runs or cauliflowers. Okay, now that has had a chance to totally dry, we can then add a second layer or glaze onto our dry paint. And here I'm looking for a soft blend, so I'm adding clean water just to the bottom edge. And then just building up these darker values. Next I'm switching to my smaller number 6 brush with its pointed bristles, and it's the perfect brush for painting this sort of fur effect. Lots of short dabby strokes tapering at the end. Now I think exercises like this are perfect for practicing your brush control, skimming the top of the paper and constantly changing the direction with your wrist. I also like to use my finger for smudging out and creating a crusty end to some of these brush strokes. Now for that lovely blue of his eye, and I'm using some Cerulean Blue. Now this is a colour that often comes included in many pan sets, but I find it can hugely differ from one brand to another, often being quite dull and milky. But I've always loved the vibrancy of the Schmincke Cerulean Blue hue. Now we're not sponsored, but if you're interested in buying a tube, I have a link below in the description. So next, this is a good exercise in getting a good flat wash. And then I'm dropping in some phthalo green into the wet. Next I'm taking some Ultramarine Blue along the top edge here, still into the wet again, and making sure that this is a thicker consistency to avoid any of those back runs. Here I'm drying my brush and lifting out a few subtle highlights. And then here with some Payne's Grey. Now this is dried, that lid above the eye is just a little too light, so I'm slightly knocking back with a very watery mix of Payne's Grey. Now for some details, and because this is dark enough in value, I'm painting directly over top with the Payne's Grey. Okay, so for those of you who follow my channel regularly will know I like to use a bit of opaque medium. So this is an orange pastel pencil. And here with a white to get some lighter fur effects on top of those darker areas. And the final touch, when I want a real crisp white highlight, I use some thick gooey white gouache direct from the tube. There we go, all done in just under 30 minutes. Sound effects please. Okay, so for this next exercise we're painting an elephant's eye, and this time I'm drawing in quite a solid pencil line so it plays quite an important role in the finished piece. So we're going to look at creating some lovely textures. So starting as normal by wetting the paper and letting the colours mix on the paper. And I'm doing this very quickly using my flat brush. Here I'm using some Mars Black, which is a super granulating colour, which I'm hoping will add extra texture to the wrinkled skin. And of course a little splattering into the wet. Next I'm using some cling film or saran wrap or whatever you may call it. Now I usually make a right mess in peeling this stuff off. Damn it, bloody stuff. Anyway, peel a sheet off, press it down firmly onto the wet painting and wait about 10 minutes. Then slowly peel off the film and you get this lovely wrinkled texture. Again, practice your nice flat washes here. And lift off a few highlights with a damp brush. And while it's still wet, a good blob of Payne's grey bang into the centre. And any pink will do here for this fleshy bit. And here bringing out some of that 3D effect by wetting the wrinkles, then dropping in the Payne's grey to get these soft edges. And here, just using the Payne's grey again to bring out some details, and I'm using my smaller number 6 brush. Time for some lovely gooey white gouache or white acrylic for those lovely little sparkles of light. and a little more brown detail to the pupil. There we go, all done in about 30 minutes. Sound effects please. Okay, so for this last exercise we've got this stunning crocodile's eye. So this is going to be mainly an exercise in mixing colours. Now I've listed here all the colours I'm using, but I'm not going to tell you the ratios I'm using. So this is for you really to practice and of course to experiment using your own colours. Now for me, when I first learned to mix colours, I found it easier and far more enjoyable to paint practical exercises like this one rather than swatching endless paint charts. Now I think it becomes more intuitive this way, as you tend to remember these colour ratios better when you have a relevant subject to relate it to. Now I've never made a paint mixing chart up in my life. And I'm not decrying it, we're all different and we all like to learn in different ways, but I just feel that there is more to be gained in just doing it and enjoying the creative experience of painting actual things, rather than painting hundreds of little coloured squares. Now, please don't worry if your colours are significantly different to mine, just have fun with it and see where it takes you. Here I'm splatting into the damp wash, hopefully to create some mottled effect to the skin. Okay, so now I've painted the first layer of washes, I'm letting this totally dry. Might even get a chance to slip in an Aussie crocodile lager. And now I'm laying these washes on top, but keeping them transparent enough to see the original wash through. Again, let this dry, and you can use any bright yellow for his eye. And with this green, make sure the yellow is still wet enough to get that soft blend. Okay, so next I want to create that mottled texture in his eye. So I've pre-cut a paper mask, roughly the shape, and then I'm splatting into the damp with both the green and some of the Payne's grey. And when that's dried, splatting in again with the same colours to get some more defined splats. And of course you can practice your splat sizes around the edge. So finally, with my smaller number 6 brush, just increasing the contrast and bringing out further details. Okay, now for some opaque paint, and I've added a little yellow watercolour to my white gouache. So gouache, being a water-based medium, mixes very well with any watercolour paint or ink. And then finally some thick white to add in these lovely little sparkles. And perhaps a white pastel pencil to add in some softer highlights. There we go, all done, and this one in just over 30 minutes. Well, I hope you enjoyed those as much as I did, and you'll give all 3 of them a go. And remember, they don't have to be masterpieces, they're just little simple practice exercises for you to enjoy. So please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. It is free. Leave a comment. I do read every single one, although I can't always reply to each one. And of course, I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Take care now.